Right, we now come to the urgent question. Dr. Neil Hudson.
Ask the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs if he will make a statement on the government's emergency contingency response to the recent confirmation of foot and mouth disease in Germany.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The whole House will be aware of the concern felt across rural communities about the potential threat of foot and mouth disease. Because foot and mouth disease is a severe, highly contagious viral disease of livestock that, as we know, can have a significant economic impact and a truly devastating effect on farming and rural communities when outbreaks occur, as we know from past history. Now, I can assure the House the UK is currently free of foot and mouth disease and has been since 2007. But following the confirmation on the 10th of January of foot and mouth disease in the German state of Brandenburg, DEFRA has taken rapid action to protect the UK, including suspending the commercial import of susceptible animals from Germany and restricting personal imports of animal products from across the European Union. And I can assure the House the Government will do whatever it takes to protect our nation's farmers from the risk posed by foot and mouth. Risk levels for the UK we have increased to medium. And last night, the Chief Veterinary Officer and I spoke directly with the federal German minister and his officials. The government has taken decisive and immediate action. The import of cattle, pigs and sheep from Germany has been stopped to protect farmers and protect their livelihoods. We will not hesitate to add additional countries to the list if the disease spreads. And I can inform the House that the Chief Veterinary Officer this morning has confirmed that while Germany's surveillance continues to be ongoing, they have not as yet detected any further cases. Now, foot and mouth disease guidance is available on government.uk, and livestock farmers are urged to be extra vigilant and report any suspect disease to APHA immediately. And the UK Chief Veterinary Officer is also urging livestock keepers to remain vigilant to the clinical signs of FMD. I reiterate, there are no cases in the UK currently. I would also reassure the House that FMD poses no risk to human or food safety, but it is a highly contagious viral disease of cattle, sheep, pigs and other cloven-hoofed animals. Livestock keepers should therefore be absolutely rigorous about their biosecurity. And the Government is absolutely focused on responding to the animal disease threats we face, protecting animal health and welfare. Upholding high biosecurity standards is paramount to protecting and promoting food production and food safety, both animal and human, and support our economy and trade. And that's why we've invested a further £200 million in the UK's main research and laboratory testing facilities at Weybridge to bolster protection against animal disease. Now, whilst we stand ready to protect our livestock from the threat of foot and mouth disease and other exotic disease, we also offer our support to our European neighbours as they face this threat to their livestock, farming and rural communities. I can assure the House the Government will be decisive and take the necessary action to protect our farmers from foot and mouth disease.
Minister Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for granting this question. I declare a strong personal and professional interest. As a veterinary surgeon, I supervised some of the animal culls in the 2001 outbreak, witnessing sights I never want to see again in my lifetime, Mr. Speaker. The confirmation on January the 10th of foot and mouth disease in Germany, with subsequent slaughter and movement restrictions, is sending shockwaves around Europe and the UK. We have requested this question as no statement has been provided to the House on Monday or Tuesday. My colleague, the Shadow DEFRA Secretary, is not able to be with us today as she is at the Llama Show in Birmingham speaking to agricultural manufacturers and farmers. In 2001, the foot and mouth outbreak resulted in more than 6 million animals being culled and cost £12.8 billion in today's prices. It devastated the farming community, and farmers want reassurance that action is being taken to protect our borders, their livestock and their livelihoods. The mental health impacts of foot and mouth, Mr. Speaker, cannot be overstated. Can the Minister reassure us that the announced movement restrictions are fully in place for animals and products coming to the UK from the affected area? Will the Government think about extending the ban to personal imports of meat and milk products unless accompanied by veterinary documentation? And can he update us on the work tracing possible movements of products from Germany? Also, what advice is there about movement of people and vehicles from the area in terms of fomite transmission of the virus? And heaven forbid, Mr. Speaker, if foot and mouth ever entered the United Kingdom, what is the situation regarding vaccine supply and potential deployment? Finally, I want to again pay tribute to the chief vets, the veterinary, animal officers, scientists and officials at the Animal and Plant Health Agency who do so much to keep our country biosecure. This foot and mouth disease wake-up call is yet more evidence that the government must now commit to fully fund the redevelopment of the APHA HQ in Weybridge. I call and I urge the government from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Speaker, to fully fund that redevelopment, to make sure that the burning pyres of slaughtered animals, as well as the economic and mental health devastation of foot and mouth disease, remain resolutely confined to the history books.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I fully appreciate the expertise and the passion that the honourable gentleman brings to this subject. He knows of what he speaks. I hope I have, in my initial reply, made it clear just how seriously the government takes these issues. I spoke to him earlier this morning ahead of a previous piece of legislation making it clear that we would work in a cross-party basis to tackle this should this come to our shores. I'll try and address the questions he raised, particularly around vaccination, because I know that that is an issue which is always raised and is always of concern. We're absolutely ready in case that is a control that we need to implement, but the advice in general is that with regards to control measures, if an outbreak were to occur in the UK, in addition to culling and immediate movement controls, vaccination is a control option that will be considered by DEFRA and devolved administrations at the outset of any outbreak. I can also assure him that the UK Vaccine Bank holds vaccines for a range of foot and mouth disease serotypes. I can also assure him that there is good close working with the devolved administrations to make sure that we are working in harmony on this. On the movement of goods of personally carried goods, I can also remind him that this government strengthened those controls at the borders, and I'm confident that we are doing everything it is possible to do at the moment to make sure that we are following the right procedures given the risk assessments that have been put in place. Obviously, our sincere hope is that this does not extend beyond the Brandenburg area, but we are absolutely ready to deal with those issues. As I've said, in terms of the investment at Weybridge, we have committed an initial £200 million. This is a debate we have been having over some time, but I'm afraid we are working with the resources we have now, and I'm confident we have a very good set of procedures in place to tackle any potential incursion.
Julia Mims.
Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the honourable member for Epping Forest's concern and passion on this subject. I, like him, know only too well the devastation that was caused in 2001. Indeed, the honourable member had the privilege of representing a large part of what is now the Carlisle constituency. Cumbria was the worst affected part of the country in 2001. 30% of the culled cattle at that time were from Cumbrian farms. So can I ask the Minister just to elaborate on what steps are being taken to ensure that our farmers and their livestock are protected ahead, God forbid, of any potential future outbreak?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question and for the concern that she raises quite rightly. As I said at the outset of my response, we are well aware of the concern that people have. But people should be reassured that we have very good tracing facilities these days. The technologies have improved, and I think what is particularly important is that we are in very close contact with our German colleagues who are sharing advice on a regular basis. So everything that can be done is being done, but I absolutely recognise the concerns that people have.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Tim Farron.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr Speaker, I confess, I think all of us in Westmorland and across rural Britain feel a sense of terror, actually, at this news as we recall the devastation and horror of the outbreak of 2001. I will never forget that looming sense of dread and threat as the disease got closer to our farms, the dread when the disease was diagnosed as whole herds and flocks were slaughtered by those who had cared for them. I won't forget the burning fires on the hillsides of the bodies of the slaughtered animals, or the deep trauma that affected all of our communities, but especially our children. We must do everything to avoid a repeat. So can the Minister explain why this outbreak was notified on Friday and yet DEFRA only issued instructions to prevent imports from the affected areas yesterday, when countries like Mexico and South Korea were able to act over the weekend? Does he acknowledge the need now to invest in APHA and the new laboratory urgently and undo the delay of the previous government? Does he accept that the failure of the last government, and so far his government, to sign a veterinary and phytosanitary agreement with the EU increases the risk of biosecurity and to British farmers? Will he act swiftly to put this right? And finally, would he meet urgently with the noble Lord Currie, who headed the inquiry after the 2001 outbreak, so that we are ready and have learned all the lessons of previous failures, so that our farms, our rural communities, our animal welfare are protected at all costs?
Just say it's very important. I had the first case of foot and mouth that was detected in that year, so I know all about it. But we must stick to the times that's been allocated. Let's try Lizzi Collins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In 2000...
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I say I'm always happy to speak to Lord Currie. He brings huge expertise and knowledge to this. Can I just say that on that issue of delay, there was no delay. Essentially, as soon as we were informed, we put the appropriate processes in place, and goods that were staff at border control points were issued instructions to hold goods at the border. So everything that was done as quickly as possible. I hear his point about our relationship with the German government. What I can assure him is I personally know the German minister. I spoke to him personally yesterday, and we are getting every cooperation needed from the German government.
Lizzi Collins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In 2001, I lived in North Cumbria, and I will never, ever forget the sights of burning livestock in my friends' fields. Can the Minister assure me that my farmers in Morecambe and Lunesdale, who are by far and large livestock farmers, will never have to face that terrible scene again, and that we will do everything we possibly can to ensure foot and mouth does not spread to our country? Thank you.
Minister.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend again for her comments and for her account of the effect it had on her constituents. And the purpose of my statement, or my response to the question today, is to give reassurance to people that we have very, very high quality officials working very, very hard to make sure that we do everything we can to prevent such an outbreak again.
Chair of the Select Committee, Alistair.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As well as my own entry in the Register of Members' Interests, I should tell the House that my wife is a practising veterinary surgeon who occasionally is contracted to provide local veterinary official services to the Animal and Plant Health Agency. I too remember the events of 2001, and I remember, having just been elected, the debates that we had in this House, and we said we must always learn the lessons and never forget, but in truth, frankly, we have done. And the extent to which we are exposed today is something for which there is responsibility shared across the parties. The state of the APHA headquarters in Weybridge is a disgrace, and it is now an urgent disgrace. Hopefully, this is a bullet that we will dodge, but if we do, we know that there is also the risk of African swine fever, blue tongue, avian influenza all coming. Is this the point where, across the House, we can all agree on the importance of biosecurity and the importance of funding it?
Well, I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for his point. I think we all know how important biosecurity is, and that is why the Government committed that further £200 million, that very important facility in Weybridge.
Richard Quigley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister confirm what mitigation funding has been made available to farms that may be affected, and also can he commit to look urgently at the provision of an abattoir on the Isle of Wight, because we don't currently have one?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. It's a good try. Obviously, at the moment, we're talking about an outbreak in Germany. Should there be, and obviously we're doing everything we can to prevent an outbreak in the UK, we'll come back forward with further proposals. But at the moment, we are working hard to make sure that does not happen.
Simon Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Could the Minister confirm that, given the seriousness of the issues, that when in doubt, the precautionary principle will come to the fore and urgency and the proper decisions will be taken? And given the shared land border with the island of Ireland and the trade there, he's mentioned that working with the Devolves. Can he also confirm what conversations he may have had or may be planning to have with the government in Dublin?
Minister.
I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question, and he's absolutely right. We will, of course, take every precaution and apply the precautionary principle. And in terms of Northern Ireland, we treat them in the same way, of course, as the devolved administrations, and my colleague is having conversations later today.
Alison Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the statement, and I know that the news is of worry to farmers in my constituency of Scarborough and Whitby. Would the Minister be able to share with the House more details about the funding that's available from his department to help prevent new animal diseases?
Minister.
Well, again, I thank my honourable friend for her point and her concern. We have an extensive set of facilities and agencies who are tasked with protecting our country on these issues. I have every confidence in the Chief Veterinary Officer and her officials in the Animal and Plant Health Agency, subject to the issues that have been raised around long-term funding, but we have good protections in place and people should have confidence in them.
To Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and yet again we rely on the fantastic people and Animal and Plant Health Agency, which is based in Hoare in my constituency, despite its slightly confusing name. Would the Minister join with me in terms of thanking the people working there? And does he agree with me that it urgently needs investment to improve the facilities? I don't think he's visited the APHA, but would he join me on a tour as soon as we can arrange, just to see for himself, just the state that it's in and what improvements are urgently needed?
Minister.
I'm always grateful for invitations from honourable members and feel I'm permanently on tour, but he's right, I've not yet had the opportunity to visit, although Secretary of State has. But last week when I was at a conference in York, very senior officials from the APHA gave me a very detailed briefing on the work that they do. So I share the thanks to those people. They play a huge role in keeping our country safe.
Louise Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a child, I distinctly remember the creeping fear on my family's farms as foot and mouth felt that it crept ever closer, which I realised even as a child, and I feel sick just thinking that we could ever go back there. Many of the farmers in my constituency have repeatedly raised their concerns over infectious diseases entering the UK. Please can the Minister assure me and them that we're doing everything to take this very seriously and have contingency plans in place? Thank you.
Minister.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend again for reflecting on the awful experiences of 20 years ago, and I can assure her that we have excellent people, exactly as I've just been referring to, who are working extremely hard to minimise the risk of any further outbreak, and we're doing everything we can to prevent that happening.
Colin Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister not agree with me that it is a preposterous situation that Northern Ireland has been excluded from the UK ban on imports from Germany because of the outbreak of foot and mouth there? And would he agree with me that it is the tip of the iceberg with regards to the impact that the Windsor Framework and Protocol is continuing to have on our agri-food industry in Northern Ireland, since he thinks, and rightly so, it is essential to protect GB farms from potentially devastating impacts? Why does he think and believe that Northern Ireland farms are not as important?
Minister.
Northern Ireland farms are just as important, and in Northern Ireland the controls will apply to meat and live animals moving from a 3-kilometre protection zone and 10-kilometre surveillance zone surrounding the affected premises in Germany. Those products cannot be moved to Northern Ireland.
Sally Jameson. Deputy Speaker, can the Minister outline what measures are being taken to ensure that no animals have been infected by the outbreak in Germany end up in this country?
Minister.
I can assure my honourable friend that this is an unusual outbreak in the sense it's not clear. It's a very small herd of water buffalo, 20 of them. What is unknown at the moment to the German authorities is how they got infected in the first place. So there's obviously extensive work going on in Germany to try and understand that. The difference, I guess, from 20 years ago is we have much better science now in terms of being able to trace the particular where it might have come from. So obviously extensive work is going on across Europe because this is a threat to the entire continent. So I can assure that every avenue is being explored to try and make sure we understand how this has happened to make sure it goes no further.
Sarah Dyke.
Deputy Speaker, as a farmer's daughter, I fully remember the sickening impact of the last foot and mouth outbreaks across Somerset and Dorset, and particularly on farmers' mental health. Those culling restrictions resulted in 73% of farmers experiencing depression and anxiety following the last outbreak. And now almost one half of the farming community are already experiencing anxiety. So what plans does the government have to support farmers who may be impacted with this disease or indeed any other biosecurity risk?
Minister.
Again, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. I know she takes these issues very, very seriously, and we've discussed them before. Let me be clear here. This is an outbreak in Germany at the moment. We are doing everything we can to make sure it does not extend into our country. But, of course, people are concerned and worried. Should it develop further, which we're absolutely determined to make sure doesn't happen, then, of course, we'll be looking at further measures to help and support people. But we are not at that stage at the moment.
Claire Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his responses? It's very reassuring, I think, that the seriousness of this situation is felt across the House and all across the country. Could I just ask, I know you talked about working with the devolved administrations, but just some further points on how you will work with the Welsh Government in particular to address this issue?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question and her concern. Look, I can assure her that we have an extremely close relationship with the Welsh Government. Minister Hume Davis and I speak frequently. In fact, we were only speaking at the Oxford Farming Conference a few days ago, and we're in regular contact on issues like these. So anything we do, we will be working together on an entire United Kingdom basis.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With some of the most productive grassland in the UK, Dumfries and Galloway is terrified, not worried by this outbreak, and I'm reassured that we are doing what we can, but it is a very difficult problem to solve. Can the Minister reassure me, though, that the Republic of Ireland will not be the unlocked back door through which this dread disease returns to this country?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and I absolutely also welcome his appreciation of the complexities that we face, but it is in everybody's interest to make sure that we stop this, and we are all cooperating closely together. The veterinary officials have a very good network, and they are working closely. No one wants this to extend further.
James Nash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the son of a farmer, I remember only too well waking up in the early morning to come down to listen to Radio 4 in silence as a family, as we heard about more and more animals being culled during the crisis in the early 2000s. Can I therefore ask the Minister what steps are being taken to engage the NFU and other trade bodies to prepare for any outbreak here in the UK?
Minister.
Again, I thank my honourable friend for his concern and his recollections. I can assure him, in fact, yesterday we were having a round table to discuss the threat posed by blue tongue, and we are obviously in constant dialogue with all those who have direct interest and expertise. We'll be working in lockstep.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In his initial answer, the Secretary of State talked about protecting the UK. He spoke about our nation's farmers. Part of the advice he gave was to look to .gov.uk. .gov.uk gives advice to Scottish farmers, to English farmers, to Welsh farmers, but not to Northern Ireland farmers. So the Secretary of State, can I ask you, why have you abandoned Northern Ireland farmers? The last outbreak in 2001 cost the Northern Ireland economy £24.2 million. To talk about that small region in Germany that can't export to Northern Ireland, would the Secretary of State not agree it would be better putting in an entire ban from German products into Northern Ireland, the same as the rest of the United Kingdom.
We stand with farmers across the entire United Kingdom. The circumstances are slightly different for reasons that the honourable gentleman will understand, which is why we have to provide appropriate advice. But we are working absolutely in tandem and lockstep with colleagues across Europe to beat this horrible disease.
Luke Charters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently visited the Animal and Plant Health Agency in Weybridge, and it's their critical work that will prevent foot and mouth from reaching our shores. The £200 million the government's announced for the APHA is welcome, but will my honourable friend commit to reviewing the APHA's funding, particularly in the event of multiple concurrent diseases happening at the same time?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his observations, and absolutely, of course, we constantly keep under review the resources that we have available to tackle all these issues, and I'm very happy. I'll be very happy, I think, now on the basis of a number of interventions to visit Weybridge at the earliest opportunity.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will know that, unfortunately, foot and mouth disease looms large in the memory of many Shropshire farmers. And I just wondered whether, talking about visits, whether a genuine point, whether the Minister and indeed the Secretary of State would consider visiting Harper Adams University in my constituency, which he will know is the top agricultural university in Europe. And the reason I mention that is they do have veterinary experts that have a particular expertise in this disease and others. But as the Shadow Minister stated, pigs, cattle, sheep, over 6 million lost in 2001 and 2007. And he mentioned biodiversity. I just wonder whether you can give an update to the House on illegal imports of meat and their checks at the border and the implementation of the border target operating model.
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question and also for his invitation. I shall add him to my list. On the checks at the borders, that is a complicated set of issues, but one of the Brexit benefits, if you like, is we actually have checks at the borders, and I'm confident that they are giving us a level of security that should give people confidence. And as I said in an earlier answer, we've actually strengthened those controls on personal imports. So obviously it is always a challenge to protect any area, but we are in a better position than colleagues in mainland Europe.
Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's really good to see this cross-party support for increased investment in Weybridge, because this has long been needed. But to touch on my honourable friend's point from Orkney on biosecurity, we know that there's lots of illegally imported meat coming through our ports, and it is a huge biosecurity risk, even more so if there is foot and mouth on the continent. Can we ensure that, along with investing in Weybridge and improving those facilities, we look at how we resource the port authorities properly to catch all this illegally imported meat?
Minister.
The honourable gentleman makes an important point, and clearly we're all trying to do everything we can to make sure that illegal imports are intercepted and stopped. I'm delighted to see there's an outbreak of cross-party consensus on the need to invest more. I hope there's also an outbreak of consensus on how to fund it.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituency was one of the most significantly impacted in the 2001 outbreak. Virtually every hoofed animal within Dumfriesshire was slaughtered, and the smoke from the pyre hung over particularly the Annan Valley for days. A large part of the market in livestock in my constituency is in the Honourable Lady from Carlisle's constituency at the Longtown market, which was a source of the previous outbreak. Will he ensure that we're working closely with the Scottish Government, because there is a significant amount of cross-border movement of animals, and that needs to be properly identified and regulated?
Minister.
The right honourable gentleman speaks with passion and paints a vivid picture of that dismal period. I remember it well, sadly. And I can give him an absolute assurance that he will know from his time in government that at official level in particular, the veterinary officers work very, very closely together. This is an absolute shared endeavour, and we'll be absolutely doing everything we can to make sure that there's that close cooperation that is needed.
Anne Davis.
Diolch, Madam Deputy Llefarydd. As a dairy farmer, the devastating outbreak of foot and mouth over 20 years ago was on my doorstep. We were very lucky as a family farm, but sadly others within my farming community in Wales were not. The outbreak was also a food security issue, understood to derive from food waste fed to pigs. So can the Minister inform me what lessons the UK Government has learned from that outbreak to better secure our food chains and to keep our livestock safe and food supplies safe?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and again I recognise the hurt that she recollects from that dreadful time before. Clearly there was a lot of work that was done in the light of those events. Lessons have been learned, technology has changed and improved. I think it's probably worthy of a longer debate to go into all the lessons that have been learned, but it is very, very important that we act on the lessons that were learned. We do not want a repeat of what happened in 2001.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. Like many other members, I very clearly remember the events of 2001 and the last foot and mouth outbreak, not least because all the cattle and sheep on my family farm, my father's family farm in Berwickshire, were slaughtered. The emotional trauma will stay with farming communities for many, many years to come. I'm reassured that the Government is engaging with the Scottish Government on this, but is the Minister also speaking to the National Farmers Union in Scotland and local authorities to ensure that they're able to support farming communities in the best way possible?
Again, the Honourable Gentleman speaks with passion and conviction about that dreadful time, and I fully respect that. What I should say to the House is the outbreak was notified on Friday. We're on Wednesday. Absolutely, of course, we're ready to move to the next stage should it be necessary. But at this point, the key priority has got to be making sure that we keep this disease out of our country, and that is where the attention is focused at the moment. In the dismal possibility that we have to move to measures within our country, then of course we'll be working very, very closely with everyone that needs to be involved.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, I'd genuinely like to say that I'm sure my farmers, like myself, will be hugely grateful to know that this is going to be operational on a cross-party basis. Our farmers are more important than party politics. Back in 2001, I was in fact the Liberal Democrat candidate for Totnes constituency. And the only thing that made it easier for my farmers to understand what was going on was the amount of communication that I had done with them before the outbreak happened, because of course one wasn't able to go on a farm once the outbreak happened. So could I encourage you to communicate as much with farmers as you possibly can during this very difficult time? Thank you.
Minister.
Again, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her recollections of the time before. Again, can I reiterate, we are at the point of trying to make sure that this does not arrive on our shores. Should that happen, then of course we move to a different phase. We're not at that point yet. And it is important to reassure people that we have excellent measures, excellent people in place working very, very hard to make sure we do not get to that point.
Harriet Cross.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Government's efforts in bringing us up to speed today, but also in imposing the import ban. In terms of the import ban, I recognise that this is for projects from Germany, but does it capture projects which maybe originate from Germany, but the point of import is outside of Germany? And also, what steps is the Government taking to increase spot testing or screening proactively across the country so we can get ahead of any outbreak if it were to come?
Minister.
We're applying all the rules that we can to make sure it is the German products that we're excluding at the moment. But it is quite a complex set of supply chains within the European Union. The key priority is live animals, and they have been. And I was going to say fortuitously, there's nothing fortuitous about blue tongue, but there have actually been restrictions in place on movements for some time. So we are probably better protected than we might have been because of that already. So what we cannot say for sure is that nothing moves across the continent and comes into the country, which is why it's very important that people are vigilant as well to make sure, because should it cross the channel, then speed will be the essence to make sure that we shut it down. But I am confident when talking to the Chief Vet and her officials and the conversations with German colleagues that everything that can be done is being done. So I hope that reassures her.
Caroline Bowden.
Thank
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure nobody in Devon will forget the horror of 2001 when half of the farms in the county were affected by foot and mouth. Is it the situation at the moment in Germany, does that give the Minister a impetus to try and move forward with securing a veterinary deal with the European Union?
Minister.
We don't need any extra impetus. It's a government commitment to get a better deal. But what I can say to the Honourable Lady is that actually the relationship with our German colleagues at the moment is excellent, and they're giving us the full cooperation that we need.
Charlie Dewhurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Germany is a timely reminder of the livestock diseases that threaten the UK every day, and the Minister has said he'll take every precaution available to him. So will he use this opportunity to permanently ban all personal imports of meat and ensure that both the public health authorities and border force are resourced to tackle the illegal meat importation?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. We spoke frequently when he was in his previous role, when I was in opposition. Again, he knows of what he speaks. We have strong measures in place. We actually strengthened them a few months ago, and I'm confident that they are at the right level at the moment. Certainly, of course, there's always a case for further investment. I'm sure the honourable gentleman will be supporting any measures that we bring forward.
Jim Alistair.
Does the Minister accept that the reason why he cannot provide a national protection to Northern Ireland as well as the GB is because this House has surrendered the right to make these regulations for Northern Ireland? They can't even be made instalment because only a foreign parliament is now entitled to make them. And therefore, we in Northern Ireland do not, for our farmers and their livelihoods, have the protections that are afforded elsewhere, and see a ban only restricted to the immediate area from Germany. Within that context, are we going to see the absurdity that we've seen under Bluetongue, that cattle and livestock from mainland Europe can transit through GB, despite a ban in respect of Bluetongue, can transit through GB to Northern Ireland and indeed anywhere in the island of Ireland? Is that same loophole going to apply here?
Minister.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman as we continue our dialogue on this issue. I don't recognise that loophole, and I can assure him that Northern Ireland will be fully protected because that is what we are determined to do.
David Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Farmers in my constituency of Brecon, Radnor and Cumtower are very concerned by this news, as Powys is one of the hardest hit regions by the 2001 outbreak, and the trauma remains for the 2,000 livestock farmers who were affected. Can the Minister update us with some further details on the conversations he has had with the Welsh Government, and will he commit that the Welsh Government will commit to working with local authorities?
Minister.
Again, I thank the honourable gentleman again for not just for the question, but for the concern he expressed about his constituents who suffered so grievously before. The detailed level of conversations around these issues is conducted between the veterinary officers, and the veterinary officers have a very, very close network. Any political decisions that need to be made will be made by ministers, and I have a very close relationship with Minister Ranka Davis. If further action is needed, we will be working together to stop any further incursions.
Helen Morgan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Shropshire, dairy and other livestock farmers have been having a torrid time recently, and they will have read this news with a sense of dread. I'm also an officer on the All-Party Group for Food Security, and we recently heard some eye-watering evidence from the border authorities at Dover about illegal meat imports and the threat that they pose to UK biosecurity. Can the Minister explain to the House what assessment he's made of the problems with that process, and what he intends to do to ensure that diseases like foot and mouth don't arrive in the UK?
Minister.
Well, again, I thank the honourable lady for the concern that she expresses, and I repeat the points I made earlier about the border controls that we have in place. Of course, we've been aware, I'm afraid this has been a long-running issue, but we have much stronger border controls in place than we would have done in previous times, and we're working hard with the Port Health authorities to make sure that we crack down on illegal imports of meat.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister very much for his response. Declaring interest, Madam
Deputy Speaker, as a member of the Ulster Farmers Union. Indeed, I live in a farm in the Irish Peninsula where dairy farming and sheepmen surround me. So the impact upon them would be great. And for that reason, I asked the Minister this question. I can well remember the pyres of dead animals and traumatised farmers who all were concerned, as they always are, about their animals. And that over 20 years ago in 2001. The lessons were hard and well learned. The Minister, I say this respectfully to the Minister, because we've had 3 other Northern Ireland MPs have asked this question, and the 4th one to ask a similar question, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think we need it clarified for farmers, for my neighbours in Northern Ireland, for all those who farm, that there will be zero tolerance of products from Germany. And will the UK-wide, including will it be UK-wide, including Northern Ireland, and that a full report will come to this House before any ban is lifted. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And again, I thank the honourable gentleman. He speaks with passion on these issues. Absolutely can give him strong assurance that the measures in place to protect farmers in Northern Ireland are strong and will be, in my view, good enough to make sure we can protect people properly. Clearly, there is a slightly different set of arrangements. He'll be well aware of that, and that is why those we have to respect. But we are getting absolute, total cooperation from our German colleagues. There will be no meat coming from those parts of Germany to Northern Ireland.
Can I thank the Minister for his responses? There might need to be a few moments, although I don't see many people leaving the chamber. So if anyone is planning to leave, please do so quickly and quietly.